Hi everyone, I am Louise Labbe-Fahy. I'm the CE Director here at East Woodstock Congregational Church. Today is Pentecost. If you remember, on Wednesday we start to talk about Pentecost and start to get ready for Pentecost. So just to review, Pentecost is 50 days after Easter. So if you remember, on Easter, Jesus rose from the dead, and then he spent some time with his disciples. 50 days is 7 weeks. So he spent 7 weeks with his disciples, still teaching them the things that they needed to know so that when Jesus was gone, they would be great teachers. And so on Pentecost, two things happen. One is Jesus ascended into heaven. And so what ascend means is that he goes up. Ascend means up. So like if you're riding in a plane and you take off in a plane, the plane ascends up into the air, okay? So ascend means goes up. So some people call Pentecost the ascension of the Lord. The other thing that happens on Pentecost is that after Jesus had ascended to heaven, the apostles, the disciples, were filled with the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit came to them, and it gave them more ability to be able to then go out and teach the other people all over the world, not just the disciples, and not just those that had been following Jesus right then and around then, but also people in different parts of the world. And so in order to do that, we talk about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So they had known God the Father. Jesus had taught them about that. They knew about Jesus the Son. And this was the third part. This was the Holy Spirit. And so people talk about the Holy Spirit in terms of, sometimes they say it's a dove. Sometimes they say it was like a tongue of fire, a little piece of fire. Some people say it was like a blowing of a great wind that came. But in that, God sent them the gifts of the Holy Spirit, which enabled them to teach. And so there are several gifts of the Holy Spirit. I don't remember if you remember that on Wednesday, we made the little kite and we put the gifts of the Holy Spirit on them. And I asked you to see if you knew what any of these were and that I would explain those today. Because sometimes these are things that are hard to really understand. So the first gift that he gave was the gift of wisdom. And so wisdom is just to let us judge things in the same way that God would judge things. So if God would say that things are good, we judge that in the same way that God would judge it. So that's what wisdom is. He also gave him the gift of knowledge. And knowledge is, it lets us see the world as it really is. We get to see the good things and we get to see the bad things, but we understand and we know really, and we understand and we see the world with the ability to be able to see it as it really is. The third thing he gave was the gift of counsel. And you could also call counsel the right judgment. So this gift helps us to do this gift helps us to know what to do, especially when we're faced with really, really hard decisions. And sometimes, it is hard to follow Jesus, and it is hard to do the things that we need to do. So in right judgment or counsel, it gives us the ability to be able to help with those things. The fourth thing that he gave was fortitude. Anybody know what fortitude means? I think Pastor Sue said, but she wasn't going to give us the answer. So fortitude is another word for courage. And this gives us the strength to do what is right, no matter how hard it is. And we just said that sometimes we are going to be filled with things that are very hard to do. And we need that courage from God to be able to do those things. We also get the gift of understanding. And another word for understanding can be comprehend. Maybe understanding is easier to use. So that the gift of understanding means that we comprehend all the things that God tells us to do. Because sometimes that's really hard to do. We have to really listen with our ears and see with our eyes and look around. And so with the gift of understanding, we're able to come and do those things. The seventh thing that he gave is fear of the Lord. And sometimes we hear that word fear and we think, we have to be scared of God. And that's not really what it's all about. It means that when we see the things around us, we're in awe of what God has done. We look out and we see the green grass, and we know that that's something that God has given us. So we're in awe of the things that God has done, the beautiful plants, the people. And so we understand the power that God has and all the greatness that he has in order to do those things. The other thing he gives us is the gift of piety. Now that's another hard word, but another word for piety could be reverence. And again, that's another hard word. But if we break it really down and want to understand it, what it can be is that God gives us the gifts and the power to love our neighbor as ourselves. That's all. We love our neighbor as ourselves. So that's the 7 gifts in kind of like a breakdown fashion. And like, those are things that we learn as we go along in our lives. It's not something that we've learned just in one time, and that these things build up. And so over time, maybe in Sunday school, we learn a little bit about something, maybe about the gift of courage. And then we go out into the world and we live it and we remember, yes, there it is. And then maybe a little while later, we come across something else and we think of something else and we know, what has God taught us? I have to love that person just like the way he is my neighbor, how God would want me to love that person. And so getting the gifts of the Holy Spirit are things that we always can grow deeper and deeper in. So another thing that we think of on Pentecost is that, do you see I got red on today? We think of red, and we usually use red to celebrate Pentecost. And the reason we use red is because red is the color of joy. And it's also a color that reminds us of the Holy Spirit. It represents the Holy Spirit. So, but it is a color that is the symbol of joy. The other thing that is today is that we say that Pentecost is also the birth of the church. And we're not talking about when East Woodstock Congregational Church first started. We are talking about when the church, all the disciples, all of us started. And that was way back after Jesus. Remember, I told you he ascended into heaven, and that then the disciples were given the gifts so that they could go out and teach other people. And at that time, that's when we say it was the birth of the church. So it's the birthday of the church. So with a birthday, we have to have cake. So I brought a cake, okay? And we can light our candles. And if we're going to talk about and sing about birthday, if it's the church, whose birthday is it? It is our birthday, because we are the disciples. We are the people that God has sent to do his work. So I'm going to light our candles. Okay. And if you guys could help me sing out there together, okay? And we're going to sing happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to us. Sorry, I'm not a great singer. Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday, dear church. Happy birthday to us. So I have cake here, and I know both my girls are anxious to have cake tonight. Maybe you could ask your parents if they could make a cake tonight, or you could make a cake tonight for today. And maybe you could also celebrate the birth of the church. And you know what? Even explain that to your parents and what that really means so that you could have that tonight or at some point today. Just a couple of other things. I want to make sure that everyone has received the email that I sent out this week, because in 2 weeks, it is Children's Sunday. Can you believe that? It's like a whole year of Sunday school is almost done. We've got just 2 weeks left. So if you have not received my email, please get in touch with me and let me know. But what I am asking for is if you could send me a picture of each of you. And then if you have anything else that you want to share on Children's Sunday, if you have any pictures or coloring or anything, projects that you did, and you can drop those off on the ramp at church, and I will pick them up and we will use them for Children's Sunday. We will not be able to get together in person, but Pastor Sue and Ann Sorensen and I are working together to make a service for Children's Sunday on June 14th that we'll still be able to incorporate some of the things that we've done and talked about. And I think it's still going to be a lot of fun, even though we can't all be together. But, you know, I'm hopeful that at some point we can be together when it is safe. And not just for us, but safe for the other people of our congregation. And it's safe for everybody. Excuse me. We are still collecting canned goods and non-perishable food, as well as cards that you've made and that you'd like to send out to people who could use some brightening up. So you can also drop those off on the ramp at church. And tonight at 7 o'clock, I have a story for you. I think I'm going to do 3 stories tonight because they're kind of short. So at 7 o'clock, we'll have our stories. So I'm going to leave you now and see you later today. But until then, peace be with you.